Prince Harry is sharing new details about his life as a British royal.
The latest revelations from the Duke of Sussex come one day ahead of the publication of his highly anticipated memoir, Spare. Prince Harry spoke to Anderson Cooper in a candid interview for 60 Minutes that aired yesterday. He discussed his relationships with the royal family and opened up about the physical altercation with his brother, Prince William, that he wrote about in his new book.
I was defending my wife, and he was coming for my wife. He was shouting at me, I was shouting back at him. It wasn't nice, it wasn't pleasant at all. And he snapped, and he pushed me to the floor.
He knocked you over?
He knocked me over. I landed on the dog bowl.
You cut your back?
Yeah, I cut my back. I didn't know about it at the time. But yeah, he apologized afterwards. It was a pretty nasty experience.
Joining us now is 60 Minutes producer Draggan Mihailovich. Also with us is Erin Vanderhoof. She is a staff writer for Vanity Fair and a co-host of its Dynasty podcast. Welcome. It is really great to have you both. A lot to cover. And Draggan, let me start with you. That interview with Prince Harry was so powerful, compelling, eye-opening at times. Were you surprised that Prince Harry was so forthcoming in that interview?
Well, he's very forthcoming in his book. So I knew he was going to unload on the British tabloids. That was a guarantee. We weren't quite as certain that he would go so far on camera, talking about his late mother, the Queen Consort, his stepmother, Camilla, and particularly his rift with his brother, William. But he delivered.
Well, there was an unaired clip that we get to show our viewers in which Prince Harry discusses how the royal family responded to Meghan's race. Let's play that.
Neither of us believe that that comment or that experience or that opinion was based in racism. Unconscious bias, yes. But I think that you speak to the majority, maybe not all, but the majority of mixed race couples around the world, that the white side of the family would wonder whether talking openly about it or amongst themselves, what the kids are going to look like. The key word here was concern, as opposed to curiosity.
Erin, I'm wondering if you're surprised at Prince Harry's response in that. There was a lot made about comments when Meghan was expecting, about, you know, what the baby would look like, and unconscious bias, ignorance, all of those things certainly come into play. But are you surprised that he's not saying racism in so forceful a tone?
Well, I found myself thinking back to March 2021 when that Oprah interview aired, and I remember actually being surprised at first that the tack the tabloids had taken was to search for a royal racist, like specifically, quote unquote, the royal racist. That was not a Harry and Meghan invention. And so, you know, looking back, I think at the time I wrote about the fact that they were very careful in the way that they worded that, and that specifically it was part of a lot of different things that were happening that made them feel unwelcome. So I'm less surprised. I think that there is a pretty reasonable critique that, you know, if they were being so careful in the beginning, that there were times they could have could have changed some of those misconceptions about how that had gone off. But at the same time, I think that they have always wanted to deal with this in a sort of more complicated way. And so it kind of proves this point about the tabloids in a lot of ways.
You know, Draggan, I'm curious about something that we heard Anderson say coming out of the interview, talking about the palace and sort of its response. Can you just, for people who didn't see this, can you explain what the initial sort of request was from Buckingham Palace with respect to, you know, any kind of comment or weighing in? Because it sort of speaks to the mentality, I think, and the difference between how it is that British journalists might have been expected to behave versus American journalists.
Well, we reached out to Buckingham Palace for comment about particular allegations which were in the piece and in the book, which at that point had already leaked. And we were a little bit surprised that this went to the press office, and the response came from Buckingham Palace's lawyers immediately. So there was an immediate escalation, and they demanded to see the report before it aired.
Demanded. This was not a request.
Yeah. No, it was pretty strongly
It was
worded.
a legal request.
There was a legal request that was clear. I mean, everyone was sort of like, wow, okay, this has gone to another level already. Which, of course, we don't do, have never done. We don't do it for presidents. We don't do it for prime ministers. We wouldn't do it for anybody. It's just not something that's done. I don't know if that was a tactical move on Buckingham Palace's part, in that they knew we weren't going to do that. And then, therefore, they could say, well, you know, they weren't going to give us the report, so we can't comment. So that we wouldn't come out of the piece saying we reached out to Buckingham Palace for comment, the palace declined. That's not a good look either.
Mm-hmm. So Elaine and I were talking about your interview with Prince Harry. And while there's a lot of royal gazing, it also, we thought, revealed more about sort of our changing society, about a boy grieving the loss of his mother, and in this complicated system where people are peering in and sort of family secrets need to be protected, which is something that people who maybe don't have a royal title can also understand and relate to. I'm wondering, for both of you, what you thought the takeaway was from this. Is it just the big, he's fighting with his brother, or was there something maybe more universal there?
Well, I think the line from the interview that I think is gonna, we're gonna be seeing this in royal biographies to come, is that Harry wanted a family, not an institution. And I think that this is one of the things that I always try when I'm talking about this to Americans to kind of think about, is like, imagine this is a family business, so it's both a family, but it's also the business. There's always kind of tensions about, heir and spare, even in families where you don't own anything. Mm. But I think Harry was understanding, he was talking about the sense that he felt betrayed because he said, okay, we're done with the business. I don't want to be a part of this institution, but he also lost his family. And I think that is in some ways, I think that the pals already said they don't think that his allegations have been that damaging. But I think that that's a more damaging allegation than they have really acknowledged. And I think it's going to take a while before we start to see the family and not just the business when we're looking at them.
I'm going to go in a little different direction. My takeaway from reading the book, and even in the interview, having been there, was that Harry, as we know him today, his life was shaped by his mother's death. Mm. Everything that happened on August 31st has affected him to this day. And everything that has transpired to this day all goes back to August 31st, 1997.
So that's the impression I got, too. As a parent, it's hard not to look at it through that lens. Draggan Mihailovich and Erin Vanderhoof, so great to have you both here. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.